I mean, let's get right into it. Like you were saying, we got the election. It went down. They have the exact words that I'm seeing that media is using: projected winner of Joe Biden in the 2020 presidential election, U.S. presidential election. We were going to talk about the election anyway, of course, because we were talking about it internally, me and Charles, man. We were like, this is something, of course, that everybody right now, the pulse is running through everybody with this, of course, here in the US, across the globe too, but definitely here in the US, and how it ties into everything, what's been going on. Like I said, just keeping that genuine message about the reason why we're on this call in the first place, because the social climate has changed tremendously once George Floyd got killed. And one part of the narrative that people had was putting out about the elections coming up, man, we need to vote, we need to get involved, we need to do something, stuff got to change. It was a part of the idea of changing. So that the election is one to one with what's been going on, just sitting around, just the problem with what's going on with black people, the oppression, there's been multiple things going on around the election as well with both candidates. So let's get into it. And let's talk about when I first initially, thought about it, I was like, okay, the election, the reason why it makes significance to me in regards to everything, because one, a lot of people are hinging their a lot of energy and emotion on the election to be like, this is going to cause the change that we need. Some people are really going into it like, we get this dude, far as like Donald Trump, out of office. We can start to get somebody else in there. We can start to build the world we want to have. They render him to being a big part to why the climate it is what it is. But even though we know this stuff has been going on way before Donald Trump was even born. So that's one reason it's a one-to-one connection like that. And two, for me personally, is just to look beyond just the political aspect of it, but tie into how does it affect people socially and emotionally, because at the end of the day, the whole climate, the whole situation, what's going on with the country is something that's internally, it's a heart and mind thing. You can change everything on the outside, but it's hard to go inside and change people's hearts and minds of what they really feel and really think. That's the whole essence why we get together talking right now, to have real, open, like I said, honest, transparent dialogue. Get what you really thinking on the inside to the outside. So me, it's like the election is tied into something greater than just the political aspect. It's the whole attitude. It's the split with the country. It's the you have the extremities. Do you have meat in the middle? So it's cross references up more than just the political. Like I said, just how people live their day to day life and what they really think is going to be the impact with the election right now and going forward. So just interested to see what y'all thought about it. I mean, I can crack it open definitely myself and just get into it. Um, Me personally, I mean, I didn't vote, what I'm saying, partially because I've never voted honestly in my life as far as like the presidency and the elections. They just, um, me personally, didn't really see the direct impact of what I've seen. I grew up in East Tampa, Nucio area in the hood, still live actually in that area now, different location, but in the area, and just seeing what the effects of black people from when I was younger. It didn't matter, honestly, who was in the presidency. It didn't matter who was in the mayor. It didn't matter who was the governor. The people around me still had the same lifestyle. They still was operating on the same means. And that's to this very day. So that's part of the reason why actually um that's so looking at the election with me, it was like, it wasn't actually anything that was going to be real significant on the attitude of the people. Now, if I were to honestly vote, and I told people this, like even in the past, I would have voted for Trump. You know what I'm saying? Like I personally feel that the reason why I like Trump and what he represents to the country when he came in, it was just bigger than just him as a person himself, but it was a shifting of the times, what was going on in the country, just being kind of in tune with the climate of things. Like he brought forth the attitude and the essence of what people truly feel. Personally, myself as a black individual, um, it was something I personally felt. People were surprised, for instance, like when he said the comment back in 2016, like, and he was recorded by grab him in the pussy or something like that. People like, oh my goodness, what? And I was like, that's pretty much regular shit. That's what dudes do, first of all, and then that's how dudes really be talking, first of all. But this is the attitude of how people are, and people are, oh, he's a racist, he's this and that. It's not about being a racist to me. It's about the track record and the history of the country. He just personified it. And I rather honestly deal with somebody out in the open, knowing how they truly feel and how they truly think, any type of day before I deal with somebody just gives me a public persona and an image to the public and talking politically correct, but then their actions are showing me totally different. So that just the element of deception and the snakeness, because for us as Black people, it's real harmful, because I see amongst my personal observation of my community, we buy into it with a sense of hope, like something will happen, something will change. They're going to finally do us right. And they're voting. But every time what comes around, nothing changes. So they're just kind of waiting for somebody to do it themselves instead of getting up and doing it ourselves. And I'm like, that's good that we get to see all this shit out in the open, because it kind of made people start being like, well, something got to happen. What's really going on? I need to get involved. I need to get educated. I need to, whatever. So I like it for the fact that it pushed the needle and it pushed energy forward, because a lot of people just on the fence, sitting back a lot, watching things happen. And then they're surprised when they hear certain thing going on when it's been happening. So it was a representation of everybody, as far as like generally, from my angle, white society, or as far as the U.S. and how they really attitude think as a majority out in the open, and I appreciated that, because it put it on front street, and it allowed me personally to have conversations that I had with people that I was hard to have in the past, because it was in your face like that. So I'm just kicking it off on just on my general aspect of what's going into it, and just we can spread it around and go from here. All right, Charles.
Yeah, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but I don't agree with all of your points, but I do think there's something to be said for, bringing things out into the open. I certainly agree with you that without Trump, maybe there would not have been as much mobilization by the Black community and by allies of the Black community, where obviously we've seen quite a bit of pushback, if you will, corporations and groups and people picking sides, and Black Lives Matter, people joining, supporting, etc. Right? Like, I see that that's potentially a byproduct of the polarization, right? And people being like, well, damn, it really is messed up out here, and we do have to do something. So I recognize that, but I still think Trump was a net negative for Black people in general. I think when a lot of the mobilization that I feel like we saw was in response to increased fear. And I don't think that fear necessarily was there as acutely for as many people as it was before him. Now, whether that fear was based on something real or otherwise, I'm sure we'll get into here. But I think people being afraid in their own communities is like net negative. It's bad for people. It releases hormones and that are bad for your brain, that are going to hinder performance, make people less happy, more prone to depression, etc. And I think in general, right, a president's job is to unite people. And I think uniting us is like a good recipe for everyone. So I still think it was net negative having him be our president. And I think we are much better off both as a nation, and I think Black people in general are probably better off without Trump as president. Although I just want to flag this, and this is something before we started recording, that Steve and I think shared this opinion, which is there's still a lot of work to be done. I definitely think complacency is a dangerous risk of Joe Biden become president. He's not going to save the world. He's not going to fix all of the country's problems, and he's certainly not going to fix all of Black people's problems. So for sure, complacency is something we have to be aware of, but I still think he creates an environment where like change can happen for the better.
I got Steve.
Yeah. So, and I hear you with the getting the transparency out with the general public and what's inside of people's heart. Because one thing that I've stated over years and years is that the civil rights movement changed what was on the books, and it did very little to change what's in people's hearts. When you usher in integration by way of military might, I mean, when you have to call in the National Guard, that's a military move. So that didn't, you didn't set up any systems to work on people's hearts and minds. So this has been festering the whole time. And Now, what gets me about looking at a Trump continuation, well, actually his first 4 years, I saw that as, okay, I see it, we see it. It comes a point where we have to be honest about where we are. Gotcha. Now, as far as looking at it from a standpoint of where we are as Black people and what needs to happen, I wrote a post. I said, I voted for an administration, not a messiah. And I mean that. The reality is these are individuals that represent us, but they present us with the position and the opportunity to fight for what it is that we want. Because especially in the Black community, we know we have to fight for it. And that's something that I'm hearing over and over again. What is this politician going to do for me? What is this politician going to do? They're going to do what who's ever organized lobbies for. That's what they're going to do. Whatever group is organized and lobbying and doing what it takes to fight for what they want, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And the thing about it is, a squeaky wheel, when it comes down to politics, it still has to be active. But if you're a squeaky wheel just sitting still, complaining, hey, we need begging and complaining, then no, it's not, no, they owe us this, they owe us that. Yeah, that's the truth. Yes, I believe that wholeheartedly. But everything owed to us has always, anything that we receive that's owed to us has always had to be in a fight. That hasn't changed. So at this point, this is where the work comes in. Okay, this is clear. And I saw the Biden administration as a better place to actually fight. Because it's one thing to fight an opponent who doesn't care about the rules. They don't care anything about the rules whatsoever. They'll elbow you, they'll do whatever, that doesn't matter. But if you fight an opponent that actually cares about the rules, you stand a better chance of actually fighting your fight. So that's what I'm saying about it. If Biden is concerned about optics, concerned about how the public receives him, then that actually gives us a more of an advantage in the fight that we have to fight, as opposed to somebody who don't care about the rules at all.
Yeah, I'll give it a go here. I want to respond to a couple things that have been said. I think Charles summed it up in terms of Trump's, him exposing, if you will, an environment or a way of thinking that may have been present to whatever degree. I think it's important to recognize that it was a net negative. Like the response to him being in office to me was at best viewed as a silver lining and not necessarily like a strategy, right? And I think I say that to say civic duty is not the only way to enact change, but it is a really, really, really important way, I think, to move the needle on some of this stuff. And this actually takes me back to a conversation Adam and I have had quite a bit about what comes first, like the chicken or the egg, as it pertains to social change, right? Do people's hearts change and then we go and we enact administrative changes, or do you just kind of create the environment where it's, where rules benefit a certain group, or not even benefit a certain group, but are more balanced and fair and even, and then people's hearts over time change because of those rules? I'm not saying I have the answer, but I think it's important to for us to maybe talk about that, right? Because I don't know who said it, their point, I think more than anything else, I think it was Steve, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Steve, this is just an environment for change. There still has to be this sort of effort by not just Black people, really across the board, by everybody to administratively make some of these things happen. So I would just say that in terms of Trump not being elected and Biden being elected, I think I look at it in two different ways. The first of which is what it does for the last 4 years and the way that we think about America and the way that we voted, right? You hear people on TV talking about the soul of America. I'm not going to spend time talking about that. I think for us, the challenge now is, again, going back to that point of administratively, how we go get things done. We won the Biden won the presidency, right? But he's still going to face some real challenges as it pertains to the Senate and a few other places and getting some of this stuff done. So, I'm more interested in what his agenda is and how he operates, because he's going to, again, I'm going to say this, like, as much as I want us to be united and him to reach across the aisle and politically, but also just to, for us to kind of come to these agreements about the way we get over some of this stuff, there's going to be opposition, and he is going to have to make some decisions to do things that are like aggressively partisan if it is that we want to make some change. And that's the hard thing that I think Democrats have always dealt with, is that, like, we're trying to work with people and maybe we hold off to try to get like consensus and agreement. Whereas, when Republicans are in office, like, and they want to get something done, and if they have the benefit, they and they don't care. And they, you know what I mean? So I as much as we can talk about some of the soul being healed and some of the stuff that it does for us, like, emotionally, I think there's a true conversation to be had about how we actually go get stuff administratively done.
All
right. Yeah, I don't have too much to say. I guess I'll just kind of touch on a couple various points that you guys said. Like, the first thing that came out to me was when you were talking to Your Highness about your reasoning behind supporting Trump. And one of the first things you said was you were a little bit dismissive of the rhetoric that he would use. And so you used the example of the I forgot his Entertainment Tonight tape or whatever it was, when he was on the bus and he said that, grab him by the P business. And I think we have different expectations for the individual that's supposed to represent us as a country than we do for, like, our homeboy, right? So, like, Michael Shea had, like, this skit a couple years ago, and he's kind of talking about this, and he's like, I don't want to go to the club with Obama, right? He's like, I'm gonna be in there. I'm trying to talk to some girls. I'm gonna be like, dang, that girl got a fatty. Obama's gonna come out and be like, all right, now that's not how we talk to women. He's like, all right, man, get out of here, right? Like, you don't want to hang out with that guy, right? But he's like, again, he pretty much reiterated the comment. He's like, but I have a different expectation for someone who's my president. If I'm at the club, I'm like, yeah, Donald Trump is probably hilarious. He's probably awesome to be there, right? He's talking crap. He's saying this stuff, talking about. He's like, yeah, that guy's fun. I think we have different expectations for our leaders, and I think the words that he says and the things that he does are really detrimental. Not even just to, like, really just the Black community, but just the way we're perceived on the national stage, right? Because you were saying that. How the media is putting it out, like, projected winner and stuff like this. I don't even think it's even just like a localized thing, right? Like, you look at, like, the world leaders' response to this, like, they all jumped on it to say, like, congratulating Joe Biden. Like, I don't think it was just like a American thing. I think the world was just, like, exhausted of this guy. They're just tired of it. So you see, like, New Zealand, Germany, just across the board, all of these prime ministers, presidents, leaders, chancellors coming all across announcing the victory. I think everyone's just, like, tired, and they're exhausted of that same rhetoric that we're kind of being a little bit flippant about. And when it comes to actual progress or, lack thereof for the Black community, I think there's two things. I think, one, we have to have a realistic understanding of how the process works and how some of that change comes about. And then two, I think you have to have a critical look at, like, the actual things that have been done, right, by the Trump administration. And there's no easier way to do that than to look at how he's, like, picked apart, like, the Justice Department in the first 4 years, right? Like, all of those actions demonstrably hurt the Black community, whether it was from voter restriction and voter restriction in Texas, or removing the use of consent decrees, all of this stuff. Sorry, I'm running over, but
no, definitely. In fact, I would almost say, can we vote to give him a few more seconds, just because I think he may have a handle on some of the sort of legal nuance or legislative nuance.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't have too much more to say. Like, really, like, if you're looking at like the actions that were done in the Department of Justice in the first 4 years, I don't think anyone could look at those and say they were beneficial to Black people, right? Like, in fact, the amount of prosecutions for hate crimes went down. Like I said, the use of consent decrees was almost wholly removed, and it's one of the most effective mechanisms for chasing down some of these items. The voter discrimination laws, the backing of like the requirement from witnesses on certifications, witnesses on signatures for particular battles, which is kind of nuts for like people in particular communities. Like, all of these items were pushed by a Department of Justice under the Trump administration, which they hurt us. They hurt Black people. It was detrimental to us. So I mean, it's hard for me to like reconcile, like, and I do give, like, I respect what you guys are saying, right? Like, you're like, you know what, we see it, right? We see it, but I feel like Black people, we always saw it, right? Like it wasn't like new to us. Like, I know the world it was new to the world when Trump came out, right? We're like, oh crap, like everyone's like, dang, this guy's crazy, but I'm like, did you not know like that stuff was around? We all knew it. Like, I was just like, oh yeah. I mean, Dave Chappelle did a skit about this, right? He was joking about it. He's like, this ain't new to Black folk. Like, we seen this. Like, y'all are just now seeing it, right? We've known it was here. So, I mean, while I do appreciate that, like, the, population as a whole now recognizes it, but I don't think anything's new to Black folks. I mean, we've been on this.
Yeah, and just me just responding back in. I'm gonna get my time too. Of course, I know I'll be going over a little bit, but
go for it.
But yeah, I mean, several things, man. Like, definitely off the last thing you were just saying, Adam. Like, as Black people, we've been through this. Honestly, like, it was not that, and that's why like my attitude was like nothing, like kind of like, yeah, that's how they talk. That's what they do. That's what people do. Part of it, just to get some clarity on my perspective, where I'm coming from, like. What I represent as far as the heart, deep of the heart of Black people is even though me being able to go some places that a lot of people that I grew up with didn't go, and do some things that people that I grew up with didn't do, or even that some of them even look at me a little funny sometimes. Like, I told Charles a little while ago about the thing about the vegan. I don't know if maybe it was you, like when I first started eating veggie, some of my homies used to come to my crib way back in the day, open the refrigerator, like, man, this is like a white person refrigerator. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? This was like the late 90s. You know what I'm saying? So just like, so I just know that I don't see different side of the perspective, but what I represent, I stay always connected to where I came from, and how and what how we grew up. And it's a sense of hopelessness and despair that I'm still connected with Black people, that and that hopelessness and despair and the internal pain and suffering is so great that any kind of manifestation in the external world that will, help people to kind of see more of what we're doing, we're going to take. You know what I'm saying? Or what we're going through, we're going to take. So when this dude got into this office, and people were like, oh my goodness, like, I don't believe this. And I'm like, what, you don't believe? Like, let me just jump in the car with me and let's just ride around the hood real quick. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me just show you what people's been going through for generations upon generations. Like, so this is like I say, what I saw was just beyond, I was even telling my sister the other day, the name Trump itself, it's just beyond a name. It's become enameled now, where it's a word where people have tied themselves emotionally and rally behind as like a calling card, just like anything. Like, it's scriptures in the Bible that talk about the Almighty and the name that they represent in different societies and cultures, the name, what it means, what it represents. So people, it's an ideal, it's an attitude, and people are walking around pinning up a lot of things inside of them, and it has to come out at some point. So when I saw that, and it made everybody kind of come out in the open and be like, this is ridiculous. Like, the attitude of the government, from my experience, or whatever represented to me, I got 30. What it represented to me is like, it's like, damn, like we've been going through this shit for so long. Like that attitude, I've been feeling and hearing that attitude in so many ways every day of my life, and the people around me every day of our lives. We're not surprised, we're not shocked. Like this is how they think. This is how, you know, what he represents. This is how the government moves. They don't care. They put in policy. They have a constitution that was written in the 1700s that says every man is entitled to liberty, health, and I don't know if I'm putting it in the right order, but life, liberty, health, you know, happiness. Everybody. This is just on paper, man. This is just on paper. Like in real life, that's not true. And because some people that are actually empowered to, if you really are aligned with those ideals, to blossom those to everyone around you, you're not doing it with your power and influence. And your children are not doing it, and their children are not doing it, and it keeps happening. So people sink into this hole from, like, some black people think it's like a point of no return. So when you see something come out and people starting to kind of be like, is this a, like, you know, for instance, when the 2016 election was going on, it was a show on Showtime covering Clinton and Trump called The Circus. It was called The Circus. You can Google it. Like, and I was like, that now people are just starting to come out in the open and talk about this shit how we talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've been seeing it as a circus, you know, like, and but now you're seeing this on display when people are like, I don't believe this. This is supposed to be the president. He don't supposed to talk like that. In real life, this is a human being that's the head of a country / corporation that has used the ideology and the system to exploit and oppress people, not just black people, even beyond other people, even amongst other white people, you know what I'm saying? And just devalue people just for a few up top. But it's put this paper and this mold that's put out to the public, and there's a lot of fake shit going on. And like I said, like, how you get to real progressive change is by being real and being truthful and being honest. And if you're not doing that, I don't really want to hear what you have to say, because you're skipping step one. And for people that's living through the pain and living through the hopelessness and suffering, it's an insult. And then knowing that you don't even really want to be open and talk about it for real, like, I know what's going on. It's a circus. It's a pony, it's a show and whatever, dance. So when Trump came out, he was like, no, this is what we do. We don't care. We don't do this. That's my African American. That's that. He was like, and people's inciting that hate up. The hate has been going on. It just, now it gets out in the open. It got to ratchet up, because everything in the dark has to come to the open, and that's where you get to real improvement, real progression. Is about being truthful, being honest, instead of just putting stuff on camera, putting stuff on paper.
Let me ask you something, Your Highness. Let me just because I want to build. Just one quick question for you. Just one quick question for you. Do you think that openness and exposure was worth the damage that was done, or has been done? Well, so I'm with you, right? Like, I agree. Okay, put it out in the open. We all want to know, and that's a good thing. Yeah. But that's not in a vacuum, right? Like, it comes with stuff. And do you think the stuff that it came with was worth that?
Well, I think, one, the word damage has to be really defined and seen what it really means. And two, was it worth it? In my personal opinion, yeah. Because my ultimate goal is freedom. And I know that people, they're like, oh, people use the statement like, well, it takes time. It only takes time because people choose to make it take time. You know what I'm saying? Like, because when I see stuff wants to get done by people, it gets done real, real quick. So in the short term, just answering, I think it was worth it, because it accelerates the process of leading to the ultimate goal of what I see as full liberation and real freedom. So